I think if we are honest, a lot of us are secretly terrified right now. We look at the speed of AI, new tools, new models, new disruptions every single week, and we feel like we are drowning. It can feel like we are already obsolete. And our internal instinct is to run faster, grind harder, to try and become machines ourselves, just to keep up. But my guest today says that is the exact mistake that is guaranteeing our failure. His name is Rich Hua. He was most recently the Chief EQ Evangelist at Amazon and worldwide head of Epic Leadership. He is now launching his own leadership and innovation company with the vision of bringing EQ skills to 1 billion people. But today, he argues that we are facing a crisis not of technology, but of biology. He believes that 70% of AI transformations fail, not because the code is bad, but because the humans are breaking. He explains why hustle culture is biologically making us stupider, why trying to control the future is dooming us, and why the only way to survive the age of AI is to stop trying to be a robot and start learning how to be a human again. This conversation completely changed how I look at my own stress, my own leadership, and my own future. If you have ever felt like the world is moving faster than your brain can handle, this episode is for you. I just have one small favor to ask before we get started. If you've been enjoying the Moonshot podcast, please hit that subscribe button and leave a review. It helps me bring on amazing guests like Rich and allows us to continue to grow the show. I'm your host, Tatjana Pandurevic. Let's dive in. Rich, thank you so much for joining the Moonshot podcast. It's so great to have you here as you are literally living through a moonshot right now, having recently left Amazon, starting your own company. To kick us off, can you share a little bit about the recent happenings in your life?
Yeah, first of all, it's a pleasure to be on this call with you today. Thank you for having me. And I was able to have the privilege of serving as the Chief EQ Evangelist and worldwide head of the Epic Leadership Program at Amazon for the past several years, and was able to launch and create a community of over 70,000 people who were passionate about practicing their emotional and social intelligence skills. And as a group, we're able to actually go out there and share it with several hundred other thousand Amazonians, and then over 1 million people actually outside of Amazon. So that has been an amazing and wild ride, and super grateful for that opportunity and experience. And I just recently stepped away to be able to launch my own company, to be able to help bring emotional and social intelligence skills to 1 billion people. That is my North Star. We reached 500,000 Amazon, 1 million outside, and now I want to 1,000x that to be able to bring it to the world at large, because I see what an incredible benefit it has to every human being and the people that they actually interact with if they develop those skills.
Only 1 billion people, Rich. That is a very big, bold bet. And I love hearing about that on this show. So I can't wait to hear how you actually want to achieve that goal and what emotional intelligence means. But to start, when I was reading about your story, something that I was really struck by is this concept of a genius robot, which is how you described yourself as a young boy, literally shutting your emotions off to the world. That must have been incredibly lonely. Can you tell me about the moment where you realized that that perhaps wasn't the best strategy to approach life with?
Yeah, so I grew up pretty socially and emotionally awkward. And I did have a really hard time making friends. Didn't know how to interact with other people. I came to America when I was 4 years old from Taiwan, and I was super hyperactive and really kind of didn't understand people. And I did experience loneliness and disappointment and resentment and a lot of things that I'm like, you know what? These are not serving me. Let me just kind of shut them all down, get rid of them. And my aspiration was to be a genius robot. The robot part, don't feel anything, be an automaton. The genius part was because I figured I was actually pretty smart. So I thought, oh, that sounds great. Let me be a genius robot. The time where that really changed, because it kind of worked okay for a while. I got straight A's in high school. I got a perfect score on the SAT. I got in every college I applied to. I studied electrical engineering, computer science, really great for robots. But then I did this thing that kind of messed up my whole plan. I got married. And my wife really didn't care about the genius part, and she really didn't like the robot part for some reason. She wanted this stuff like empathy, understanding, vulnerability, emotional connection. I'm like, what is this stuff? And I realized that I was not as good of a husband and as loving to her as I would like to be. And I also had this kind of a spiritual transformative experience in college. And I decided that I actually really wanted to work with people instead of electronics and computers. And so I became a missionary and an evangelist for another 23 years. And so, from both a personal and professional perspective, realized, these social skills might actually be really important. And I will say that, IQ is important, but the secret to my success over these last several decades has absolutely been the EQ part. It's the differentiator that has really made the key difference in being able to be promoted, have influence, influence other people, and frankly, be personally happy and healthy.
It's so important, and I think as the world becomes a lot more technologically advanced, and especially with AI, which we'll be talking a lot about today, it's a topic that I've been deeply thinking about as well, which is where is the human element in that, and what purpose will humans have moving forward to live fulfilling, purposeful lives, but also have a greater contribution, which I've heard you talk about quite a lot. I've heard you say that 70% of the time organizations that are trying to implement AI are failing. And it feels like that we're obsessed with upgrading the technology part, but we're not focusing on the human element of the equation. How do you think about that? And what should organizations be doing to really harness the potential of this technology while still focusing on the people part of the process?
Yeah, the 70% number comes from an oft sort of quoted research that came from the big consulting firms, right? And it's around innovation and transformation. And they found that basically 70% of innovation and transformation initiatives, the senior leaders were unhappy with. Like, they really didn't actually accomplish the transformation they're hoping for. And that's because any type of change in an organization requires process, technology, and people. And the process technology often are the easier parts. I'm not saying it's easy, but they're the easier parts. And the people are kind of like a side note at the end. Oh, yeah, everyone's just going to adopt whatever grand scheme that we put out there. We all pick this LLM and these workflows and this technology. Everyone just go do it. And that's why most of it fails, because the biggest challenge of innovation is not creation, it is adoption. If I had a nickel for every great idea that was innovative out there, I mean, I'd be rich, right? But people don't necessarily adopt it. And it's because, really with this massive change in AI, that is obviously the technology du jour that's going on today and will for the next, foreseeable future years, adopting new technologies, changing the ways we work, learning to do different things, a learning curve where we need to be comfortable with not doing something well for a while as we're learning it, the social implications of things as things that can get automated, and then trust is a huge factor. And it's something that a lot of leaders don't think about enough. Where do the people that I'm telling to change and do things trust where I'm actually leading them? Edelman has this thing, trust barometer they do every year. And a couple of years ago, they basically found that people who believe their leaders are using AI well have a 2 times greater chance of adopting it versus rejecting it. And that means, they're ethical, obviously they're using it for good, they're transparent, it's aligned, but also that they're considering the people in the whole process of leveraging AI. And so doing that is a very, very human thing. Are we earning trust with the people that we are actually asking to innovate and change? And so those are big factors. And so, as instead of as an afterthought, I'm trying to help leaders go put this at the forefront, just as important as the LLMs you decide to pick up. This people part is really, really significant.
I couldn't agree more. I also work in an AI role for Amazon, and I see so many organizations drive the adoption of these incredible technologies that have fantastic capabilities, but they ultimately fall over for a few different reasons. But one of them is that people component was never considered from the outset. And so it's like driving one part of the equation without looking at the other entirely. I've also heard you talk about organizations treating AI like a complicated problem versus a complex one. What does that mean?
Yeah, there's this really interesting framework called the Cynefin framework, and it came from David Snowden, who is a consultant that works with government agencies, healthcare, big tech, anti-terrorism, all sorts. And so he talks about the fact that we have different domains in which we operate. There's a clear domain, which means relationship between cause and effect is like pretty obvious. You know exactly what you're supposed to do, like bake a cookie, right? Follow the directions. There's a complicated one where, with sort of some deep analysis, the relationship between cause and effect can be figured out, but you need to kind of, have some expertise along the way, right? Like doing your taxes or setting up a new technology stack, right? There are best practices, but then there's flexibility, and then there's complex, which means that the relationship between cause and effect are emergent. We actually don't know what they are. And so a lot of experimentation has to occur to let those answers come about as we're moving along. And then the final one is chaotic. That means there's no apparent cause and effect. We have no idea what's going on. That could be like a pandemic, it could be like a terrorist attack. And so the big challenge is that a lot of leaders are treating this AI sort of revolution as a complicated challenge or domain rather than a complex. Complicated means if we just look deeply enough and look at the past enough, we can figure out what the answer should be. Versus a complex, which means, you know what, we're going to have to experiment a lot. We're going to have to learn along the way. We're going to have to adapt, and the answers will emerge. And I've done this kind of talk all over the world with like thousands and thousands of leaders. And I asked them, which domain do you think you're operating right now with AI? Do you think it's clear? No hands, right? Do you think it's complicated? Maybe a few. You think it's complex, chaotic, almost every single hand, right? They realize that we don't have the answers, and yet they're not set up with cultures of experimentation so they can let the answers evolve, right? And so the point is, if you try to treat this AI revolution as a complicated domain, you will absolutely fail because you cannot look enough at the past to be able to understand the future. We must learn it as we go.
Is it kind of like, I'll give you an analogy of how I understand this equation, and you can let me know if I'm on the mark or completely off it. Is it a complicated problem like fixing a Ferrari, um, but a complex one, perhaps like raising a child?
Yeah, some might say that's more of a chaotic one, actually. But it would be like that, right? It would be fixing Ferrari. Yes, I would say, if you look at enough of how people fix Ferraris in the past, and you have enough expertise, you can figure out how to fix this one. Complex might actually be akin to building a Ferrari as it's racing down the speedway and making modifications as you're going because you're not really sure how it's supposed to be built, and you're in the middle of an F1 race, right? That's actually kind of what it's like. And yes, I would definitely say raising a child is in that complex, chaotic. Just kind of goes between. Maybe it starts a little bit complicated, and then it becomes complex, and when they become teens, it's completely chaotic. So
Then
that's
it
just
goes chaotic, goes through the whole life cycle.
yes.
Very clear explanation. When you were sharing, what those different concepts mean, you were talking about leaders and how leaders feel when you typically deliver this talk to audiences around the world. And I think if we're being really honest, a lot of leaders are secretly terrified about this technology. They look
Yeah.
at the speed of AI and they already feel like they're obsolete. They're not sure how it works and how you lead in a time of complete uncertainty. If there's a leader that is listening to this conversation today, what are three things that they can do to really start thriving in this world of complete, almost chaos?
Yeah. Everyone's sort of in a different spot, but if I were to say some really important things, one is admit to yourself that you're experiencing these things. One of the worst things you're going to do is pretend everything's great, I'm okay, and then just sort of suppress it all. Like realizing, okay, I am feeling a lot of anxiety or uncertainty or challenge, along with excitement and, potential for the future. I mean, those all mixed together. And part of that is a foundational emotional intelligence skill, which is if you can name it, you can tame it. So if you can at least say, okay, these are the emotions I'm experiencing, okay, I have a better grasp on it. The second thing is realizing you are not alone. Every other leader out there is feeling the same thing. And anybody who pretends they have the answer, lying to themselves a little bit because no one has the answer. We all have sort of a vague idea of what we ought to be doing. And again, I've done this with executives, around the world at different events. And I say, hey, raise your hand if you're feeling like I'm in the complex or chaotic and I do not really know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, but everyone's looking at me like I should have all the answers. Like almost everybody raises their hand. So we're all in this together, right? And then the third thing I would say is work on your emotional social skills, such as adaptability and resilience and calmness, because those are all things that are skills that we can grow in. Like, don't just look at the technology or the business or the workflow decisions. Really look at how you can optimize yourself and your own state, and that's going to not just be in the IQ realm, but the EQ realm. And I know that we'll talk about some specific techniques in the days to come, but those human skills really are going to be important. And Brene Brown really has an interesting statement. She has a new book out called Strong Ground. And she actually says something kind of interesting. She says, I call BS on the fact that in this AI world, our humanity will save us because we're not really great at our humanity and our human side right now. But the hope is we can work on those things. And there are a lot of things we can do to develop that, both for ourselves, but also be able to lead our people in a more successful way.
So I wanted to ask you about some of those techniques that you just mentioned, Rich. A lot of task-based skills are fairly easier to learn, and I think that's what you equate with IQ. There's a prescriptive manual of how to learn a skill, how to develop it, how to measure it in a quantitative way. But some of those skills you just mentioned, like calmness, resilience, adaptability, how does someone begin to learn and improve at those skills? How do you measure that?
Yeah. So the really cool thing is that there's an entire science behind this. It's a combination of psychology, neuroscience, leadership paradigms, emotional intelligence. Some of the basic things I tell people are number one, I think in this AI world, positivity or positive outlook is actually a really big one. And that can actually be improved with a simple exercise, which I call the 3 by 3. Essentially, it means you write down 3 things you're grateful for every day for 3 weeks. It's that simple. And it has been shown to actually rewire your brain to be more positive. So this has been used by cognitive behavioral therapists for many, many years as the number one way that they treat depression and anxiety because it creates dopamine and serotonin, the two main neurotransmitters that actually help you to be more positive, happier, more open. And so by doing that, you can actually help yourself have a more positive outlook. And it's really important in very ambiguous and uncertain environments to go, you know what? I see a path forward. There are challenges. There are many, issues, but I believe that we can overcome. And in fact, this is used by the Navy SEALs in America, the most elite military, one of the most elite military units to be able to get out of really tough situations. They want to have a positive mindset to believe they can overcome. The other thing I really advocate is simply learning some breathing exercises. It's one of the things that people don't actually recognize, or at least a lot in sort of the Western world, that your breathing patterns actually can change your mental state because it changes you physiologically, right? And so something as simple as box breathing, which again is used by a lot in the military, is really, really powerful. So I've actually taught this technique all over the world. And if you don't mind, if we could do it together for maybe a moment.
Let's do it, and then I'd love
Yeah.
to share a story with you about box
Oh,
breathing.
okay, fantastic. Okay, so here's how it works. I'm going to ask you to do something a little goofy. If you're listening, go ahead and go along. And if you don't like it, you don't ever have to do it again, but you may actually find it's useful. So I'm going to ask us to kind of close our eyes and just sort of get all the distractions out. And we're going to do a box breathing, which means you breathe in for a 4 count, you hold it for a 4 count, you breathe out for a 4 count, and just hold it out for a 4 count. We'll just do that a few times. Okay, ready? Okay, in through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Out to the mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Into the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Out to the mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Last time. Into the nose. 2, 3, 4. Hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Out to the mouth. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it out. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, go ahead and open your eyes. And how'd that feel doing that? And I'd love to hear your story.
Incredibly calming.
Awesome. I love it. And here's actually what happened. You just activated your parasympathetic nervous system, which actually decreases blood pressure, heart rate, also calms down like intense emotions like anxiety or anger or fear. And so just by doing that, you physiologically change your body, which allows you to change your mental state as well. So anyway, I think you had a story. I'd love to hear it.
I attended one of your seminars about 7 years ago when I was out in the US, and I saw you teach this technique on a stage, box breathing, where you got the whole room to do this specific technique. And any time that I've had a really important meeting, something that's a high pressure situation, and I've felt panic, so my heart rate starts to go up, my hands get a bit sweaty, I have used this technique countless times where I will just go to the bathroom quickly, or even if I'm in a meeting room before the meeting starts, and I'll quickly repeat this exercise just to bring myself to a place of calmness before I have to go do whatever I need to do. So I have truly lived this technique from the very first time I saw you deliver it. So I wanted to say thank you.
Oh, I am thrilled to hear that, and that it's made such a profound impact on your life. Thank you for sharing. It really means a lot to me when I hear people who just even learn one thing and it's made a positive impact. So super wonderful. It's made a huge impact in my life, and I know a friend who leads sales for an entire country, and he told me a little while back. He said, Rich, I used to take aspirins multiple times a month because I'd get these tension headaches. I'm like so stressed out. But I learned this technique and I have not taken an aspirin in over a year. And I replaced medication with this. And so results will vary, but there is a whole lot of science behind that. So just even picking up some of these can really make a big difference.
No, it's really incredible. And just when you were talking about a few techniques that people can adopt, you were talking about positive attitude and positive thinking. And I've seen that validated by various different people that I've heard talk about this topic. I had a sports psychologist, a sports mindset coach, on my show about a year ago now. And he said the one crucial piece of advice that he gives to the athletes that he works with and that differentiates the top 1% to everyone else is their mental framing around difficult moments during high pressure situations. And then the athletes that have a positive framing, that's what makes all the difference. It's got nothing to do with technique and preparation and practice because everyone's putting in all that work, but it really comes down to that framing.
Yeah, I love it.
The world definitely feels right now like it's moving faster than our biology was ever designed for. And you use this physics term, the jerk, to describe this violent acceleration. What is happening physically in my brain in this current paradigm that we're in?
Yeah, and to clarify, I talk about the AI jerk. And it is not the person at your company trying to get everyone to adopt AI. That is not the AI.
I'm glad you said that because that's me. So, very, very happy we just got that out of the way.
That's right. It is actually a physics term, which means a jerk is something that's accelerating beyond our point of reference. It's like going so fast, it's like hard to comprehend what's actually happening anymore. And that is exactly what's happening with AI. I mean, to try to even keep up, it's like, what is going on? Like every day, there's already a new major LLM being released. I mean, it is just so hard. And so, what's happening, and this actually has been happening for quite some time, even before AI, we had this thing called the pandemic. I mean, a lot of things have been pushing us into this sort of constantly stressed out state. And so when we're activated like that, when our adrenaline's flowing, right? When our cortisol levels are high, when our brain is sort of on this hyper vigilant mode, it really causes long term detrimental effects, right? We get more tired, we get burned out, we don't think as clearly, we get less motivated, we can have health effects. And it's because this activation state was meant to be short term, right? Evolutionarily, like let's say you're walking down the plains or savannas, you see something that looks like a saber-toothed tiger, you want this thing activated. You want to run like it's there's no tomorrow, climb a tree, jump in a ditch, right? Get away from it. And then afterwards, it's over. Sit around the campfire, talk to your friends and family about how you escaped the saber-toothed tiger. But now it's like constant. It's emails, it's Slack messages, it's working all hours of the day and night. It's never ending. It's social media, like your phone and scrolling and doom scrolling. There's no end, and so we have to have ways to be able to unplug and stop that activation state so it's not constant, or, or again, there are deleterious effects.
How do we how do we navigate through that though? I think we've almost developed a culture where we've conditioned to believe that if we're not stressed, we're not working hard enough. But you've got a science that proves the exact opposite, that past a certain point, stress is literally making us more stupid.
Yes, and so one of the things that is important to understand is stress is not bad. Stress is just stress. I mean, it is something that we're encountering all the time. In fact, some call it pressure, this sort of thing that's coming from externally. There are 14.7 pounds per square inch of pressure in the atmosphere, right? And there's also 14.7 pounds square inch pushing out. And so we're okay, right? But Yerkes and Dodson did this really interesting research a while back where they found that stress and performance are curvilinear in relationship. Meaning, if there's too little stress, you're just kind of bored and tired. If there's too much stress, you're whacked out, like temporarily stupid. But so you want to be in that middle zone where it's not too little, not too much, where you have what's called maximum cognitive efficiency. And that's a term from Daniel Goleman, who's a world leading expert in emotional intelligence. And as the name implies, your IQ is being activated in the best possible way. It's optimal. And so that's actually where we want to be, right? It's pushing us, it's challenging us, it's kind of uncomfortable, but we have the belief that we can, deal with the situation versus there's so much I'm overwhelmed, I can't handle it. Because in that whacked out state, we're less creative, we're less open-minded, we're less curious, and we're less empathetic. And that is also where we are not the optimal version of ourselves.
So
Have you ever
I'll give you an
yes, go
example of when I'm trying to balance those two states of the equilibrium. And I'd love your advice on how I can better perfect getting into that optimal zone without completely frying my nervous system. I do a lot of presentations on stage to large audiences and large groups. And it doesn't matter how many times I do a presentation, I always feel a level of nervousness before I step out onto a stage. And I'm always swerving between that state of let's not go into ultra panic mode. So
yeah.
I forget how to speak and be free flowing when I step out onto the stage. But I also want to have the right amount of energy to bring to the audience so they're not entirely bored listening to me. What can I do in those moments to try hit that optimal state?
Yeah, the first thing I will say, is that I experience the same thing. I've been speaking to audiences, like, literally in the tens of thousands, sometimes, but I still feel that. I mean, that's just kind of a natural evolutionary thing. So there are a couple of things that I actually do. One is I will do some box breathing if I feel like I'm kind of too amped up and I just want to be able to sort of calm myself. Another thing is I actually do the power pose. Sometimes I will literally go into a bathroom and go into a stall or go somewhere and I'll just kind of put my hands up really, really high and stand big, and I'll do it for 2 minutes. And Amy Cuddy has some research where she found that if you do the power pose for 2 minutes, make yourself really big, you actually wind up increasing your confidence. And so that actually helps. People go, okay. And then the third technique is a reframing technique and really, really powerful. Instead of saying I'm nervous, I say I'm excited. Instead of saying, I'm anxious, I say I'm thrilled. And the reason that works is because anxiety and the sense of excitement are actually both high sort of amplitude type of emotions. And it's just one's a little negative, one's a little positive. So you just keep it in the sort of high amplitude, but you just kind of make it more positive. And so I do that. I go, I'm really excited. And the butterflies in my stomach, the sweaty palms, the rapid heart rate is because I'm excited. And that's cool. So I'm going to go out there and kill it. And so that actually really does help me. And what I found too is after you get past the first 1 minute, actually it just kind of starts rolling in general. And so just getting out there, that really helps me. So hopefully that'll help you too.
All right, before my next talk, I'm gonna head straight for a mirror and I'm gonna have a nice power pose that's gonna get me geared up for my talk. But I will try, I've seen the power of these simple practices that can really help. So I will definitely try a few of the ones that you've just mentioned. I want to ask you about something else that's largely been perpetuated by social media. And I realized that I can't stand in an elevator for even 10 seconds without pulling out my phone.
Yep.
We have completely murdered boredom. If I never let my brain rest and I'm constantly plugging into the matrix, what am I doing to my ability to think?
Yeah. There are so many things that we're doing. But I will say, our brain is like any other sort of part of an organism. It needs rest. And that sort of hyper vigilance, if you will, really, causes burnout. And we also have this thing called a negativity bias, right? Which means we notice and remember certainly the short term negative things more than positive things. And so that causes a negativity loop in our brain and causes more anxiety. Right. And so in that elevator, you're probably not, oh, let me look at really good news in the world. It's like bad stuff that's happening a lot of times. And so, again, that feeds that and it causes even more anxiety. So it's definitely having that detrimental effect. The other thing is that boredom actually comes because our brain's sort of natural resetting state, called the default mode network, right, is where we actually are sometimes most creative. We come up with new ideas and thoughts and make associations that we couldn't do when we were literally concentrating, and so we rob ourselves of some of our most creative opportunities. And so if we are in a space where we need to create, solve novel problems, make different associations, allowing ourselves space for that default mode sort of operation is important. I'll give you one example. I was trying to figure out the name of this program at Amazon for like a year. Like, what am I going to call this thing? EQ. And I thought I was out on a run where I was out in nature, not thinking about anything, just kind of wandering around and looking at the trees. I know it epic. That's it. That's the one. Stands for empathy, purpose, inspiration, and connection. And so it came to me, and that, of course, is taken off in a big way. But allowing ourselves to have that space allows us to invent and wander, as Jeff Bezos would like to say, in a pretty profound way.
It's kind of how people say that, sometimes their best ideas come when they're in the shower, when they're doing something completely mindless and they let their brain just finally relax and calm down and get to that state. And I think that's so important, particularly in the world where I think we talked about it a little bit where everyone seems to be experiencing a form of low grade anxiety that's AI overwhelm. You talked earlier about a new model launching every day, new features and new tools, and this feeling of you're missing out if you're not staying ahead of these thousands and thousands of announcements that are happening every week. In a world that is screaming for our attention, what is one practical technique I can use to filter out the chaos and focus on the things that actually matter?
Yeah. Um, the foundational thing that I believe everyone will benefit from cultivating is some form of mindfulness. And what I mean by mindfulness is not necessarily meditating and the yoga, like a lotus position or anything like that. It's just the opposite is mindlessness. Pretty much meaning I just let whatever's going around me dictating what I think about, what I focus on, what happens. Like we're not really intentional. And so some kind of mindfulness practice to start our day and to end our day works wonders. And this doesn't have to be a long time. It can literally be like 5 minutes where, at the beginning of the day, you start off maybe with some, form of breathing, a walk out in nature. Some people pray, like just something to kind of center yourself. Right. And then you can go into your day. And then at the end of the day, being able to also take some time and go, how was it? Like reflect on it and also get some mindfulness. And I really believe in that. And I have a technique that I use actually. I call it go big. That while I'm in bed, before I even get out of bed, I wake up and I'm like, okay, breathe, take at least one big, nice big breath. Intention, set my intention for the day. How do I want to show up? And then gratitude. One thing I'm really grateful for, either from yesterday or this day ahead. So I go big and then I get up and I put my feet on the ground. And that helps me to sort of set my day and then go ahead. So, and that can be used throughout the day as well in various forms. But I think that's really big because that is really the mind clearing, filtering function that our brain has. We just need to activate it.
I love how you talk about setting intention for the day. I think I've heard Simon Sinek talk about just the concept of starting your day, and he referred to even the practice of how most people wake up, which is alarm goes off, roll over, pick up the phone, start scrolling. That is
Oh
probably the
boy.
total opposite of setting a positive intention.
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
so what you just talk about is fantastic for that long-term thinking of what's my day going to look like ahead of me. What about acute moments of high stress or high panic where our amygdala fires up, whether it's in a meeting, um, something at work really frustrates us, could be a personal, really difficult conversation when emotions take over. What are some immediate techniques that people can deploy to really just bring themselves out of that really heated place that we've all been to?
Yeah. Well, and the thing I would say here is find something that works for you because different people have different methods. We already talked about the breathing one, super powerful. Um, a really simple one is just take one breath and count to 10, right? And that's because when your amygdala, sort of that really emotional alarm center of your brain, when it gets hijacked and it takes over your brain, it takes about 6 seconds for your thinking part, the sort of prefrontal cortex to come back online. So if you count to 10, you have a much higher chance your whole brain is functioning, not just the amygdala. So, if someone says something that really gets you angry, or they send you a flaming email, or, they cut you off in traffic, much more likely to have a helpful response after counting to 10 than if you do it right away. The other thing I said is, sort of something kinetic really does help a lot of people too. Just getting up and just like taking a walk. Obviously, if you're in the middle of a meeting, you don't want to huff out of the room. That might look a little weird, but like something that can kind of get your energy going. I mean, some people like to do some push-ups or sit-ups. Like using that energy in a way that sort of is kinetic also does help people. And the final other thing is, just again, do something that counteracts that. There's a really powerful technique that I share with people too, is like have photos near you of people you love or positive highlight experiences you can look at because that reminds you, oh, I really love my child. I really love my dog. Oh, I, climbed this mountain and did this great thing. It activates a different memory in a different part of you to kind of short circuit whatever might be going on. And so those are things that can all make a difference. So find what works for you and then, have it as a go-to technique.
I love some of those, especially the most simple one you shared at the very beginning of literally just count to 10. Something that can be applied in any scenario, any point in time. I want to really now focus on the human part of AI and our purpose in the world. And first, I think what a lot of organizations assume is to win at AI, they need to hire all the smartest PhDs in the room. But you have data from MIT that says that's completely wrong, that collective intelligence has nothing to do with individual IQ. So if it's not IQ, what is the X factor that actually makes a team smart?
Yeah, and this is a oft misunderstood um, truth and concept about how people work together, right? They think that if I want to really get thorny problems solved or really, really great stuff done, I just need to hire the smartest people. And I will say this, you need to hire people that are smart enough. Okay, like if you hire a bunch of inexperienced people who don't have the intellectual horsepower, okay, yeah, you're not going to succeed. That is fairly obvious. That being said, the research that you're mentioning out of MIT, they basically were trying to figure out teams are able to solve really challenging, thorny problems together. Okay, it was collective intelligence. Linda Hill over at Harvard has also done a lot of research on this idea of collective genius, right? So there's plenty of avenues for that, and they found that it actually had nothing to do with the individual IQ. It wasn't the smartest person. It wasn't the average IQ. It was actually three other things. It was the average social sensitivity of the members of the group. It was the extent to which the group actually took turns conversing, and everyone had a chance to talk and actually give their thoughts and their expertise and share it. And interestingly, the percentage of women in the group. And that was because women tend to have higher social sensitivity. That just was their research, right?
I've always
And
believed
so
rich. I'm glad it's validated by science.
I know you love that. And so the fact is, it was the social skills of the people and being able to work together and leverage all of that IQ that made the team actually smarter. And I think we've all seen teams where it's like, wow, those people are really, really smart and they can get basically nothing done because full of ego, they can't communicate, it's infighting, it's mistrust, it's all these social problems. And other ones that maybe the IQ isn't quote as high, but wow, they got some amazing things done because of those social capabilities. And so it's got to work together, right? And the key factor that people tend to ignore is the EQ part, but that is extremely important.
No, it's very true. I think of the teams that I've enjoyed most being a part of, and I've enjoyed the environments the best, and it's by far been the collaborative ones. And so it doesn't mean that things are easy, but it felt like everyone was contributing to the solution and the solving of the problem. Everyone felt included, really intelligent people in the room. And so there was these underlying factors that really brought out the best in those experiences that I think back to that have been by far the most rewarding in my career. But that also doesn't mean where everyone is always super polite and super nice and unafraid to be challenging as well. Can you share your thoughts around that? How to have the right amount of conflict and collaboration to really achieve the best outcomes as a group?
Yeah, there is this myth that being emotionally intelligent means you're nice. You smile at everyone, you make everyone feel good. Completely false. Okay. If you can be nice, certainly be nice, but there are going to be plenty of the conversations that don't feel nice, right? Like, if you have to have a tough performance conversation with somebody's underperforming or somebody really screwed up something that they should have known better, or you disagree on something. I mean, there's going to be a lot of these. And so it may not feel nice, but it's absolutely required. And I love this quote from Brene Brown. She says, clear is kind. Our goal is not to be nice because sometimes you can just fake it. I kind of hate your guts, but I'm going to smile at you. No, clarity, clear is kind. And so when you disagree, the research has found that having the right amount and the right kind of disagreement increases innovation, right? And that kind of disagreement means it's at a level where people are really putting forth their voices, able to speak what they believe and be able to challenge the ideas. And I call it generative disagreement, right? You're generating the best ideas rather than personal conflict where you're like attacking each other. And the difference is, hey, I don't really understand the thinking. Can you explain more of that, how you got there versus, well, that's a dumb idea, right? You see the difference, right? One's attacking the person, the other's, challenging the idea. And when you have a healthy amount of this generative disagreement, you actually do generate the best ideas. And again, the research has found it. And what I found in talking to leaders all over the world, I say, do you tend to have too much disagreement, too little disagreement, or just the right amount? Vast majority, too little.
I
And it's
love
because people, people don't want to get each other mad. It's kind of human nature. So we just kind of keep it to ourselves. But a healthy culture will actually encourage that and understand that that's really important.
I love how you share the example around feedback. because I think it's such a great example. Providing feedback, and I think it's Kim Scott who actually wrote a book about this um, when working on how to build high performance teams in organizations, and she called it radical
Mhm.
candor, which
Mhm.
is still providing direct feedback respectfully, but that feedback truly is a gift. And so, if I kind of take that analogy with what you just talked about with too little conflict, too much conflict, or just the right amount, I think about this in the connotation of that example because it's truly kindness, letting someone know where they could improve and where they can be better and where something can be a better outcome. But I also love what you just touched upon is which is discuss the idea, not the person. And that is super powerful. I did a leadership course once, and that was a focal point, which is it's very different when you talk about the object, the idea, the metrics, as opposed to you are this and you are
Yeah.
that, which is a very, very different, more personal type of feeling.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you something really interesting. I think a lot of leaders actually kind of understand the idea, but putting into practice is where emotional social skills are really important. I remember doing this leadership workshop with a whole bunch of really senior leaders, and one of them said, there are so many times where we started with like the task conflict or the generative conflict, and then we devolved into personal conflict. Like this kind of went downhill because like somebody said something maybe that wasn't exactly the right way. Somebody else got offended, and then it kind of became this mishmash of like negative emotions. And they said, "Well, how do you prevent that from happening?" And I said, "We need social emotional skills. We need to be able to we need to be able to strive to give feedback and, challenge things in a respectful manner and focus on the idea, the task, not the person. And the receiver needs to also have enough self-awareness to assume positive intent, not take things personally, and not get offended when we're really just trying to challenge the idea." Right. And so to your point, all the people involved need to have kind of a high level of ability to manage their own self and be self-aware and also strive to be able to say things in the right way, knowing that it's never going to be perfect. Like if you expect other people to be 100% respectful and say it exactly the right way every time, you will be sorely disappointed. And so we all have to work together to be able to really accomplish that.
I think that's such a great lesson for work, but for life as well.
Yeah.
Rich, if I look at 2030 and AI becomes 1,000 times smarter than me, I have to ask, what is my purpose? What is the one thing I can do as a human that a machine will never be able to take from me?
Absolutely nothing. We've got nothing left for us to do. No, I'm just kidding.
You've got to give us
What
something. We've got to have some hope to hang on to.
So here's the thing. Um, there are so many things that are going to be automated, and it is going to make our lives better. I really believe that. And yet, we do need to make sure we hold on to the things that truly make us human and truly make us special. And one of the foundational things that does make us human is love and care. That humans love and care for each other. AI and automation can simulate that, but it cannot actually truly love and care for you. And you may say, well, it feels a lot like it. Well, the thing that I would say is this: the foundation of love and care is actually sacrifice. It's I'm willing to give up something for you because I care about you. That's what parents do for their kids. It's what friends do for each other. It's what good managers do for their people, right? Servant leadership. It's I'm giving up something for you that shows I care, right? It's more than just words. Machines are not going to sacrifice for us. They can say the words and simulate it, which is fine, but the sacrifice. And that's because, in sort of the future, and it's already happening, we're going to have essentially two kinds of sort of interactions. There's going to be transactional ones where it's like, look, I just want to get something done. I just want to order this thing, or I just want to turn this thing. I don't really need a relationship. Machines are like already so much better at that. But then there's going to be meaningful ones where it's like, I want a long term engagement and interaction. That's called a relationship. And that again is where the humans. And so things that require that are going to be things like leadership, things like helping people set a purpose for their life, like coaching, like, the service industries are going to have a lot of that, when the meaningful relationship is the important thing, not just a transactional one.
That is so beautiful. I get asked this question all the time around the purpose of humans moving into this world with AI, and I will be stealing that example because I think you just so eloquently described that. Rich, I want to do a little bit of a fun speed round to finish off the
Oh,
episode before we talk
okay.
about
Oh boy, you
EQ
didn't tell me about
organization.
this.
No,
I'm not ready.
no, intentionally. So, 30-second speed round. The way that this
Oh,
works is I will say a word and you just need to say overrated or underrated and one sentence why.
oh, okay. All right.
Okay, let's get
Okay.
started. ChatGPT.
Overrated. It's used for too many things that we think it does when it actually doesn't, especially on the emotional social side.
Emotional intelligence.
Underrated. People are not truly understanding how powerful it is and how much it's going to be and already is a key factor in our thriving and success.
The metaverse.
Uh, Overrated. It has not really come out to anything because, again, people actually do crave interpersonal interaction more so maybe than ever today, and so that is actually where people more are heading and desirous of.
Robotics.
Underrated. Robots can't do a whole lot right now, especially sort of dexterity type of things that humans can, but give it 10 years. It's going to be doing a whole lot of stuff that we do now. And I do believe actually helping augment our lives because, the really tough and dangerous and things like that, they can take.
And silence.
Underrated.
No words needed. Rich, that was brilliant. Thank you for entertaining me. I know you had no expectation of our speed round. To wrap up, you're starting a new organization to bring emotional intelligence to 1 billion people around the world. For anyone listening, how can they reach out to you? How can they connect with your content to go on this journey and learn about EQ and how they can improve their lives in every aspect?
Yeah. Super simple way. Follow me on LinkedIn. I do post basically every day and sign up for my newsletter. It's on Substack. It's the EQ and Success newsletter. And so those are two avenues through which I'll be sharing, all the things that I really believe in and have found have been super helpful to me as a recovering genius robot, and also has helped, over 1 million other people be able to live happier, healthier, and more successful lives while becoming more and more the best version of themselves. And so those are two great ways. And in my new company, I am actually bringing this to organizations and companies. And so whether it's a keynote or a workshop or consulting type things, that I really do want to help leaders learn these because they have an outsized impact on the organizations that they're able to lead. And so if we can make more human leaders, we'll also be able to create higher performing and happier and more innovative organizations.
Rich, it's such an empowering vision that you're on. Thank you so much for joining the show. Every time I hear you speak, I pick up at least one technique that I adopt and I continue practicing in my own life. So I really hope that if at the very least anyone listening to this episode takes at least one technique that has a positive impact on their life. And I'm very excited. I have no doubt you will continue to reach more people and hit that $1 billion mark. And then who knows where you'll go from there. But thank you very much. It's always such a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you. It's been a wonderful pleasure to be on this podcast with you as well. I really am thankful that you were able to give me some time and space. So really appreciate it.
Thanks, Rich.